Snow fell over Denver the way it always did in January, without drama, without announcement, just a slow, steady accumulation that turned the city quiet before you even noticed. Michael Carter stood at the kitchen sink, his hands submerged in warm, soapy water, staring at the window above the faucet. Outside, the neighbor's porch light caught the flakes mid-fall, each one a brief, silver flash before it disappeared into the white below. He had been standing there long enough that the water had gone lukewarm. The casserole dish was done. Had been done. He kept scrubbing it anyway. From the living room came the familiar scratch of pencil on paper. The soft exhale of a boy working through something that wasn't going smoothly. Ethan was 8 years old and built like his father, broad shoulders that hadn't grown into themselves yet. A jaw that set hard when he concentrated. Michael dried his hands on the dish towel and leaned against the counter, listening. "Dad." "Yeah. What's a half of a half?" Michael walked to the doorway. Ethan was stretched across the carpet on his stomach. His math worksheet spread flat in front of him. His pencil tapping an impatient rhythm against his notebook. The lamplight made the room amber and close. "Think about it like a pizza," Michael said, settling onto the couch behind him. "You cut a pizza in half. Now you cut one of those halves in half again. What do you have?" Ethan stared at the ceiling. "A quarter. There you go. So fractions are just cutting things? Fractions are division. Same idea. Different clothing." Ethan wrote it down with the particular seriousness of someone recording something they intended to remember forever. Michael watched him, the way his tongue pressed against the inside of his cheek when he thought. The way his handwriting tightened when he was being careful. He had his mother's left-handedness and Michael's reluctance to ask for help until the last possible moment. It had been 4 years since Claire left. Not in any dramatic way. No screaming, no shattered plates, no single terrible night. Just a slow, mutual recognition that they had become roommates who shared a mortgage and a child and nothing much else. The divorce had been handled the way both of them handled most things. Efficiently, without unnecessary emotion, with an agreement that Ethan would always come first. It had been almost civilized. Michael sometimes thought that was the saddest part. He was, by most available metrics, doing well. The apartment was clean. The bills were paid. Ethan's teacher had used the word "times thriving times" at the last parent-teacher conference, and Michael had driven home with that word sitting in the passenger seat like a small gift. He coached Ethan's Saturday soccer team. He remembered permission slips. He had not, in 4 years, missed a single school event. But there was a specific silence that settled in after Ethan fell asleep. A silence that had nothing to do with sound. The apartment could have music playing, could have a game on television, could have every light blazing. And the silence was still there underneath it all. It was the silence of a life that was running correctly and felt, somehow, incomplete. Michael had tried to address this the way he addressed most problems. Systematically. A few dinner dates here. A few weekend coffees there. Women he found on apps. Women set up by colleagues. One memorable disaster involving a friend of his sister's. They were, almost without exception, pleasant, uncomplicated. Easy to talk to about movies and work and where they'd traveled and what they wanted in general, non-committal terms. He had not had a second date with any of them in 6 months. He didn't think too hard about why. "Dad," Ethan said again, not looking up from his worksheet. "Yeah. Bud, why don't any of my friends' moms know you?" The question landed quietly, without accusation. Just curiosity. The honest, undefended curiosity of someone who had not yet learned that certain questions carry weight. Michael looked at his son's back. At the cowlick at the crown of his head. The one that never lay flat no matter how you combed it. He thought about how to answer, and then thought about whether he actually had an answer. "I guess I haven't introduced them," he said. Ethan absorbed this. Wrote another fraction. "How come?" "Because introducing someone takes a while. You have to be sure first." "Sure of what?" Michael leaned back against the couch cushions and looked at the ceiling. Outside, the snow kept falling. The apartment was warm, and it smelled like dinner. And it was, objectively, a good life. a steady life. A life he had built with real effort and was genuinely proud of. "Sure, they're the right kind of person," he said, finally. Ethan turned around and looked at him with the flat, evaluating stare that children deploy when adults are obviously not telling the whole truth. Then he turned back to his worksheet. "Okay," he said. Michael sat there in the lamplight for a long time after that, listening to the pencil scratch across the page, and did not examine too carefully what it was, exactly, that he kept waiting to feel sure about. Sophia Bennett did not own a television. This was not a statement. It was simply that she had moved into her apartment 2 years ago and found that she had no particular desire to acquire one, and the matter had never come up again in any urgent way. The apartment was on the 4th floor of a building on Capitol Hill, with tall windows that faced west and turned amber in the late afternoon. She had furnished it deliberately. A reading chair near the larger window, a proper dining table, bookshelves that occupied 2 full walls. It looked, her friend Dana had once observed, like someone had taken the inside of a person's mind and made it habitable. On the Friday evening that Michael Carter was washing a casserole dish on the other side of the city, Sophia was sitting cross-legged on her couch with a glass of red wine, her phone face down on the cushion beside her, watching the snow collect on the window ledge. "You're doing it again," Dana said from the armchair. "Doing what?" "The silent contentment thing. It makes me feel inadequate." Sophia smiled without looking away from the window. "I'm not content. I'm just quiet. Those look the same from where I'm sitting." Dana had been Sophia's closest friend since college. 22 years of shared history that included a particularly ill-advised road trip to New Mexico, 3 joint apartments, 2 weddings, one of which had been Dana's, the other a mutual friend's, and more honest conversations than either of them could count. She was one of the very few people in Sophia's life who was allowed to push. "Are you still on the apps?" Dana asked. "No. When did you stop?" "October, I think." Dana turned her wine glass slowly in her hands. "And you don't feel the urge to get back on?" Sophia thought about this, with the same careful attention she gave to most questions. She was 38 years old. She had been married for 6 years to a man named Patrick, who was thoughtful and decent, and had been, in every measurable sense, a good husband. They had ended the marriage 4 years ago with the same